It's time to shop for a mid-size luxury SUV. And if you've got over $75,000 to spend, good news. You still get a lot for your money, even in this crazy time of inflation. The 2024 Mercedes-Benz GLE refreshed, a lot of new equipment inside. The Volvo XC90 for 2023 carries on as it's been for years, but with also some new technology updates. Let's take a drive. They're very similarly priced if you equip them right. They've got a lot of nice features inside and out, so let's get to it. The GLE was brand new for 2020. The XC90 came out for 2016. Both are extremely popular. The GLE is the best-selling Mercedes in the entire US. The XC90 is just behind the XC60 as the best-selling Volvo in the US. So these two luxury mid-size SUVs, they're very important. Gas engines are not getting phased out, not even by these two. Instead, they're mild hybrids. That means there's gas engines paired with an electric motor that's powered by a 48-volt battery. They differ from conventional hybrids in that they really don't operate in electric-only mode, not like a Toyota Prius or a plug-in hybrid. You can get plug-in hybrids in both of these versions, but these ones here, they're only mild, and that means they attach to either a 3-liter turbocharged inline-6 or a 2-liter turbocharged and electrically supercharged inline-4. Both make similar amounts of power if you get the base versions. The Mercedes in the 450 has a lot more, but if you get the T8 plug-in hybrid of the Volvo, you get even more than the Mercedes. So you have lots of different choices. But apples to apples right here, they actually get very similar fuel economy, despite the Mercedes having more power and more torque. 8-speed automatic on the Volvo, 9-speed on the Mercedes-Benz. They're pretty much neck and neck. And remember, you can outfit the Volvo with a lot more power, and you can also downgrade the Benz with less power. There's lots of choice. The first thing I notice about the GLE is how much taller it appears at the front than the Volvo. It's a taller hood, it's higher, I think it looks more like a truck, but overall the dimensions just don't scream elegance. Yes, it's a Mercedes-Benz. Yes, there's lots of tiny little Mercedes-Benz stars in the grille. That's a new feature for 2024, along with restyled headlights. They have a new LED turning lamp pattern. That's all great. But the Volvo is the one that really strikes me as the more elegant piece. Still, this one has 21-inch wheels. The GLEs get all new designs for 2024. They're bulging, they're giant out back, especially with those 315mm wide tires. Absolutely enormous even by supercar standards. And if you look at the rest of the car, it has some restyled taillights, and there's a few new colors like this twilight blue. In this spec, it's actually very pretty. A lot of the GLEs I've seen look pretty boring. If you spend the money, and you should, this is the one to get. The Volvo is the older design, but I think it's the cleaner one. It actually has more rear-wheel drive proportions despite being a front-wheel drive based vehicle than that Mercedes. The shoulder line that Volvo has had since the 1999 S80, the way it curves over the taillights, it's very simple stuff. You know this is an SUV, but the elongated presence of the hood, the height, these 21-inch wheels on this B6 Ultimate trim, it truly looks like a very expensive car, and it's less money than the Mercedes. To me, the Mercedes looks a bit gaudy, but not the Volvo in the front. When you see these Thor's Hammer LED lights, they're a very distinctive feature, still looks great today, even though for 2023, there are no obvious visual changes, pretty much nothing. This XC90 just looks classic. Front, rear, side, it is a looker all around, and it looks rich. Cargo space. Behind the third row, 13 cubic feet in the Volvo, and Mercedes doesn't even give us a number, so it's probably not very high. The Volvo has a little bit more space when that third row is folded. When all the rows are folded, the Mercedes has more, but Volvo claims it can do up to 86 if you're folding the front passenger seat forward. That's a little bit of a cheat, so the Mercedes wins on total cargo space. You have to pay more to get this type of an interior versus the Volvo, but when you do, you're getting very nice leathers and really nice woods that you won't see elsewhere. I really like all the truck-like features of this car, even though it doesn't look like one. These grab handles, by the way, and the rest of the car is fit and finished perfectly. Every GLE comes with a rectilinear design theme that's very different from the oval-looking features you'll find in other Mercedes models. It's also not a full screen. These are two 12.3-inch screens. One of them is a touchscreen, and there's still enough physical controls and a touchpad to make things easier. The steering wheel is certainly more complex, and Mercedes-Benz makes it very difficult to adjust. Just look at how many buttons there are. But when you really get used to it, all the configurations and all of the quality you can find. Even the wood on this drawer, it feels like a high-end piece of furniture. The GLE in this spec is definitely a magnificent car. Once you learn how to use all the systems inside the GLE, you'll actually appreciate all the customization it offers. Everything from the adjustment of the seats to the climate control and all of the features that are linked to accounts, everything you can personalize. This car does a better job of using the technology that it has. Even though it costs more, you're definitely getting more. The GLE has an optional third row, but because it's really designed to be a two-row SUV, there's significantly more legroom and headroom versus the Volvo, several inches. It feels very roomy back here. Even though this one does not have 4-zone climate control, doesn't have sunshades like the Volvo, heated rear seats are also an option, if you can believe that, on a car that costs almost $90,000. And what's also interesting is that the GLE does not come with captain's chairs. You can get that in the Volvo, but this, as you see it, this is how it is on every GLE. Mercedes doesn't outsource to Google like Volvo, and as such, Mercedes systems tend to be more complex. But for 2024, the GLE is actually getting simpler. When you go into the settings, you'll find less submenus, less clutter, and more ways to explain everything. It's a lot easier to adjust settings than the Volvo. For example, if I want to switch driving modes, I can do all of that from the toggle switch or go into the touchscreen and set my settings right here and there. That's something the Volvo doesn't really let you do. Plus, there's so many other ways to customize the car. Just look at all the seat adjustments you can do from here, including how the backrest and the seat rest does. That's crazy. Including automatic seat positioning, it'll even adjust your seat to your height. I don't really like that, but the fact that all of this is here and it's actually so accessible, from touchscreen to touchpad and shortcut buttons, plus climate controls that are physical switches, this is a better system. To me, Volvo has some of the best car seats in the business. They're thin and they're comfortable. They have a lot of adjustment. On this Ultimate trim, there's massage. But it's really about safety. These headrests go back to the active headrests in the late 90s when no one was doing technology like that. Now, it's commonplace across the board. That's the type of thinking you'll get in the Volvo. And it's just beautiful in this white interior. Like the Mercedes, there's a beautiful matte wood drawer that hides the cup holders. There's a crystal shifter. That's pretty awesome. There's a two-tone leather wheel, these gorgeous aluminum speaker grills, curved wood on the doors, and a nice flush screen that feels a part of the dashboard, not tacked on. There are some idiosyncrasies because what would a Volvo be without some weird quirks to it? The screen, for example, is the only way you can adjust the steering wheel heat and the climate for the seats. There's also no driving mode selector here anymore. That's also in there. And if you want to open up the glove box, can't do it here. There's an obscure little button over here that opens it. Not really necessary. There's less room back here than in the Mercedes, but there's some features that that car doesn't have. This one already has climate controls and heated seats from back here I can adjust. There's also manual side shades, nice for people with children that want to block out the rays for the babies. And something no other car has, a built-in booster cushion that's just a few $100s as an option, snaps into place, completely eliminates the needs for ugly and ridiculous booster seats that always gets in everybody's way when you're not using them. Fold it down. Volvo invented that decades ago. It's these type of features that make the XC90 truly unique. Unlike the GLE, the Volvo comes with 3 rows as standard, and you can choose between 6 or 7 passenger seating. And if you don't like this bench, the 6-passenger option gives you captain's chairs. Mercedes doesn't even do that. This 9-inch portrait screen is smaller than the GLEs, but it's actually powered by Google. That's the new change for 2023. If you go in here, you'll see all the different apps. If you're used to an Android, that's what this is running. It's faster, and it's also a bit simpler. Actually, a little too simple, because when you go in here, you actually can't adjust a lot of features like you could before in earlier XC90 models. For example, the forward collision alert, can't turn it off. And there's no driving modes accessible on here. The only thing you get here is steering feel firm, suspension feel firm, and the off-road mode is accessible up here. So things, even though they're simpler than the Mercedes and simpler than the past Volvo models, it's not as intuitive. And to me, I want to have all the customization if I'm paying this kind of money. There's a lot of other features that make this system faster than before. Google Assistant, you get Google Play, and Google Maps, which I'm a big fan of. If you go in here, you can definitely see things a lot simpler and quicker than before, and it's also projected on the instrument panel. But when you want to see what's going on with the car, you get a lot less information than when you get inside the Mercedes. You can't even see individual tire pressures. But there's a 19-speaker Bowers & Wilkins stereo that sounds much louder than you'll find in the Mercedes, which is a Burmester. Volvo has an even more complex powertrain than Mercedes. Hard to believe, but there's a turbocharger and an electric supercharger on this teensy little 4-cylinder engine. In reality, it means that you don't get better fuel economy because this engine has to work a lot harder, but it definitely performs. And unlike very old Volvo 4-cylinders that I remember, the noise on this one is pretty acceptable. The B6 is what Volvo calls the high output version of this engine. The B5, a little bit lower. I would definitely recommend getting this version with the electric supercharger. And for roughly the same price, actually a little less than our GLE, you can get the T8 plug-in hybrid that adds way more power. It adds more weight, but it's considerably faster, and it would definitely out-accelerate that Mercedes. Judging by my ear, I'm feeling it's just mildly quieter inside the XC90 than the GLE. It feels just as comfortable. This is also an air suspension. It's got a few multiple driving heights. But unfortunately, there's no multiple driving modes, not anymore. There used to be a switch right here. Now you have to go into the touchscreen and scroll down until you get to the steering feel and the suspension. For a company that's focused on driver attention and safety, this does not seem like a good idea. And in practice, it's not. Volvo's Pilot Assist, also a semi-automated system, just like Mercedes. It will self-steer, but it doesn't project the information that you really want to see on this digital dash, so it's just a tiny little icon. It also doesn't say much in the head-up display, so I think for this being an all-digital car, powered by Google, I'd like to see more of that information. But the system does work well, and you can easily toggle on the steering wheel whether you just want the regular adaptive cruise or the steering assist. So that's simple. I like the air suspension on the XC90. It's a pretty expensive option. It's almost $2,000. Not sure you really need it. The regular tuning, I think, is just fine. But once you've got those settings dialed in on the touchscreen, even without paddle shifters or a transmission mode for sport, it's weird to say it, but the Volvo is the sportier choice. I've been driving sporty Volvos for a while now. I know they're a lot different than how they were in the 90s and 2000s, when only just a very scant few of them were truly high-performance cars. And the XC90 is not a high-performance Volvo, but the chassis dynamics are actually really good. And it's just weird to think that Volvo has done a better job at providing more control. It feels more nimble than that GLE. The steering feel, not so much, even with the steering feel on firm. Nothing to write home about. But even the brakes, and they have a regen feel because this is a mild hybrid, but there's a firmer initial bite, so even that feels better. And there's definitely less head toss inside here with the way this air suspension is calibrated versus the GLE. That also contributes to, well, a feeling of less body roll. And yeah, it's actually kind of fun. These are all weird things to say. I'm not used to saying these things about Volvos, even after all these years. So if you want a better driving experience between these two SUVs, you're gonna pick the XC90, even though there's less power than what's outputted in the GLE. Doesn't make that much of a difference when you're on back roads with a lower speed limit anyway. I think it's the agility and the response. I do like the throttle tip in better. And you can't adjust that on the Volvo. There's no comfort or sport modes with that. It's just one setting. And even that is better than the Mercedes. So hats off to Volvo. The one demerit is that these 21-inch wheels cannot absorb all the road imperfections, so you will have to avoid potholes and other cracks in the road because, yeah, you can feel it coming through the seat. It's not horrible, but neither of these two SUVs, as they're equipped, can really get rid of all the shutters. It goes right through the chassis. That's the price you pay for looking good, for looking fancy. Love all that. I love big wheels. But if you're driving these SUVs on some unpaved roads, depending on where you live, you'll want to consider downsizing in tire size. And there's no brake pedal feel that you can adjust, but in any situation, the XC90 has the better initial bite. It's firmer. It feels more secure than that Mercedes. There's definitely more power in the GLE 450 because this is a turbo inline 6. 6 is pretty much always better than 4. No matter how much you turbocharge and supercharge a 4, when you turbocharge a 6, of course you're going to get more. And this is also mild hybrid, so there's that extra boost, that extra kick. There's a little more juice coming between the transmission and the engine. And it is silkier. It's smoother than the Volvo. But if you spring extra money for the 450, I think it's worth it. At the moment, I'm totally ignoring all of the 350 Mercedes models because 4s are really not Mercedes. Well, it's not really their cup of tea or their strength. 6s are very good. Their V8s are even better. And I won't go into that right now because you can get the AMG versions, which turn this car into a missile. Absolutely, completely unnecessary, but it's possible. But the GLE 450 is definitely that traditional Mercedes. No matter how much power it has, it's nice and lazy. The throttle tipping, the light steering, the extremely quiet interior, which you have to pay a little extra for extra insulation on these windows. It's $1,100, but I would say worth the money. When you're cruising, the GLE acts as the better hybrid. So there's a little secret mode here you could go into. It's eco. Well, that's not so secret, but what it does is, so what happens is, it doesn't just reduce the climate control, that you can change, but when you let your foot off the gas, the engine goes to 0 RPM, and then it kicks on seamlessly. This is what Mercedes terms sailing mode. By doing that, you can dramatically increase the fuel economy on a bigger SUV. The Volvo system does not let you do that, not at all. As comfortable and soft riding as this GLE is, when you flick the switch here on the dash, all the settings are right there in front of you. You don't have to go through the touchscreen. That's where Volvo used to put it. And the result, well, it still floats a bit more than the XC90. Even though that the air springs and these dampers are set for sport, this is not the same airmatic system in the AMG models, which is noticeably stiffer. The spring rates are entirely different in those SUVs because, well, everything is. So in the 450, it's still tuned very much for comfort. For most Mercedes drivers and would-be customers, that's what they're going to want. Really, that's what I want too if I'm driving a Mercedes that's not an AMG. This is pretty much everything you could want, but it does feel like there's just a little bit more wobble. I don't feel like this SUV has all of the poise of that XC90. The XC90 just feels like I'm a little lower to the ground. I feel a little just, I don't know, not nervous, but I feel very much aware that I'm riding a bit higher and I'm rolling a little bit more. I would have expected a little bit better, especially with these tires. They are so large, so the grip is there. It's just that the body roll is not as well kept in check as that XC90. And even the brakes, even in sport mode, there's a lot of dead zone initially. So when you're moving a little quicker and you just want to apply a bit of a brake, just a dab here and there, you don't get that initial response. You have to bite in a little bit more. There's also well, even less feel than the Volvo in terms of steering. This is very much a digital car. What tends to happen when you put everything into a by-wire system, you lose a bit. Most Mercedes drivers probably won't care because they're just really concerned about doing this, one finger steering. You shouldn't be driving that way, but that just illustrates how light these controls are and how easy and stress-free it really is. That's the real goal of the GLE. It still surprises me that the Volvo is just the swifter, well, more fun car to drive. I would not have expected that. The GLE does not fall apart by any means, but just like the Volvo, when you're going over some rougher surfaces, the cabin does shake a bit. It's a solid structure. The better compromise, if you still want comfort but want to have a little bit more agile handling in your GLE without going full AMG, you don't have to order the airmatic suspension. It's a standalone option. I like that Mercedes does that, doesn't pair it in some big package or other trim. For me, because the market for these SUVs is not about true performance, but really more about control, I'll take a dialed back approach, especially with a mid-size luxury SUV, because 90%, probably close to 100% of the time, I just want to be comfortable all the time. So I think I'll take the Benz. There's cross-drilled front rotors on this GLE, and they are very strong. I just think the pedal feel could be a bit less squishy and firmer. The Volvo just has a better bite to it. The 2024 GLE starts at $62,650. The 2023 Volvo XC90 starts at $56,000 even. The as-tested price of this GLE 450 with all the options, get ready, $88,940 with destination. But the Volvo isn't that much cheaper. It's $76,995 loaded, and if you get the plug-in hybrid, it crests over $80,000 in a heartbeat. There's other competitors, the BMW X5, Audi Q7, Infiniti QX60, Genesis GV80, even the Jeep Grand Cherokee. And the GLE has even more body styles, including a coupe version. I didn't want this to happen. I am a Volvo fan, but I'm also a Mercedes fan, so I am a bit torn that I have to choose the GLE because I don't think it looks as sharp or classic as that XC90. It also doesn't drive as well on the back roads. But pound for pound, the GLE is the better engineered vehicle. It clearly feels newer and it feels more upscale. Despite this one being more expensive, you can drop down to the GLE 350, order the same options, and be within roughly the same price as the XC90. Despite the technological upgrades of that Volvo, it's actually gone a little bit too far, to me a little too simplified, where the Mercedes is really putting you front and center with all the control you could want. Plus, I love this inline six. I think this is the one to get. So what do you think? And if you want more SUV comparos, go to CarGurus.com and subscribe to our YouTube channel. We'll see you next time.